Welcome to Mixed Reviews.
Welcome.
Before we get into the episode and everything, I was told to pass on Asha a message.
Oh, wow.
Recently, we went to go see Avatar 2 when it came out, and we were all crying in the theater. And Asha shared, do you want to share your tactic to how you didn't cry watching Avatar 2? And then I'll share my note.
Yeah, when I didn't want to cry in Avatar, I would just recite the times tables multiple times, because then my brain was thinking about multiplication problems instead of sad Avatar
Emotional problems.
Exactly. So then I wouldn't cry. But every time I felt myself tearing up, I'd start to do that.
It's really smart. So recently, my mom was at a funeral with one of her friends. My mom had told that to that friend. So during the funeral, she started doing times tables in her head, and she wanted to personally let you know. Thank you for passing on the times table. It worked. Glad. It worked.
That's funny. I've been watching Bluey recently.
Yeah.
Like the kids show Bluey. And it makes me cry. So I'm going to have to try that.
Now you know. That and Last of Us. You can try that during Last of Us.
No, see, I let myself cry at Bluey and Last of Us, because those are tears that I never shed as a child. I'm just going to take a second to like a Bluey appreciation moment. I've been planning this all week.
Bluey appreciation.
It's such a good show. Like
That's
I find
funny.
myself crying at it like all the time. Anyway.
Interesting.
It's a really good show.
I didn't know it was sad.
It's not. It's just...
It's wholesome.
It's like, from my experience, it's this dog, like this kid dog, going through all these like very depressing moments in a kid's like coming up, like a growing up, like seeing a best friend for the last time.
Right.
So it's like you've lived those moments, but you never look back at them as very sad moments, because when you're a kid, it's hard to process those things. So the last time you saw one of your old best friends was probably just a very happy time for you, but you've never seen them again. And it's now, as I'm 25 years old and I see someone, like a kid, going through that in this television show, it makes me cry, because I have best friends I've seen for the last time a few times in my life. And it's just like, oh my God, that's terrifying. And like, that's heartbreaking for me. But Bluey loves this person still and doesn't know.
That's wholesome.
Yeah, but it's making me cry. Oh. It's a very
times tables, quick times tables.
2, 5. That's not right.
Times tables. Let's do times 6, Asha.
12.
Nice.
What?
Anyways, I won't keep our guests waiting. We have another guest on today, which is very exciting. So our guest today is different from our previous guest. This person is normally on the other side of the camera as an actor.
Ooh.
Our guest has been in front of the cameras for a while, but has been coming onto the writing side.
Beautiful.
Our guest was just in a recent movie that we've all seen, but you know them from some of their other work. They starred in Dexter, 13 Sins, Nope, and my favorite, the Drake and Josh Christmas special. Please welcome our special guest, Devon Graye.
Ooh. Hello, hi. Hey, guys.
Oh, no way.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
What an honor to meet you.
Hey, Tom. Nice to meet you, too. I just listened to your guys' podcast last night, so I'm a fan, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about movies, because you're very knowledgeable.
Thank you. We're excited to have you on.
Well, hopefully I can contribute cool stuff to... I was excited to talk about a movie, but then I was like, what movie am I going to choose? Because there's so many movies that I want to talk about, but then I want to be able to talk like knowledgeably about something and not like seem like an idiot. So hopefully I'll have some stuff to say.
So you came to us with a whole bunch of really cool movies on there, but I'm curious why you picked Gone Girl. What was it about Gone Girl that was like, that's the right movie?
So I chose Gone Girl because it is like my comfort movie. It's like the movie that I put on multiple times a year. If I'm sad, if I'm stuck, like as a writer, like I put it on, like it's just sort of a movie that I find speaks to me in like a weird way. And I don't really know why. I don't know what about it does that, but it just makes me feel okay when I have that on, which is maybe up considering like what the movie is. But
were you in a manipulative relationship?
No. But you know what I think I like is I like to be manipulated, not by people, I don't think. I like a movie that manipulates me. Like I like to have to go back and rewatch and be like, oh my God, this is actually what that was talking about. Or like the opening of the movie is him talking about her head and wanting to like crack it open and see. And it's you go back and you're like, oh, that's actually what he meant. Like the whole thing is fooling us the whole time. And I love doing that as a writer, but I also like being an audience member and having that done to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's classic thriller. Like, it's trying to divert your attention to this other kind of made up ending. And it lets you create the entire ending in your own head. And then it completely flips it on the 180. But it does it a few times. You know, it flips you and then it flips you back again. And it was such a good experience. It was my first time ever seeing it. Mm-hmm. So it really...
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
I think that was the first time the three of us had watched it. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. I got to introduce you to it.
Yeah, thank you.
So when you said this, I don't know why, but in my head, because they can't really show you the trailer of this movie and be like, this is what this movie is, because it's instantly twist. So I saw it and thought, oh, well, it's like kind of like a Taken kind of thing where she goes missing, and like not at all what I was expecting. It was so good.
Cool. And did you have any, like, because it's kind of Gone Girl is one of those movies now, and even the book, it's like, it's been spoiled by so many people because it's been out for so long, but you never had it spoiled for you? No, like you didn't know going in? Cool. That's great. That's the way to go in.
Right.
I truly went into it completely blind. The only thing I knew about the movie is that it was really good. It exceeded those expectations.
Cool.
It was written so well that I just hated everybody. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, these people are so real. Like, it's as if I'm watching a news story, like, just kind of unfold in front of me. Be like, oh, I hate this guy. He did some unspeakable things to his wife, and then you find out what happened. It's like, oh, I hate this wife. Like, she's doing some really unspeakable things. It's like, oh, I like this guy. Oh, what? He's been cheating on her? I hate this guy. Like, the whole time, it's like, oh my goodness. It's just flipping through a book, just new story elements all the time.
I think my favorite part about it was the person who wrote the book wrote the script. So it really had everything in there.
Totally. And
now it makes me want to read the book because I want to see how they told that same story in the book.
Yeah, and it's actually funny. I love Gillian Flynn. I love her as an author, and I've read both her other books. I've read Sharp Objects and Dark Places, which were her first two books, and then Gone Girl was the third one. And because I'd seen the movie before I read the book, I sort of was like, oh, I've seen the movie now. I don't really need to it's been spoiled for me. Like, I don't know how exciting the book's actually going to be, but I do love her writing. So I would love to go back and read to see how different it is. And I've heard it's pretty similar. Like, I think for the most part, everything, it stays the same. It's hard to kind of do as a movie though, because when you're reading the book, you're getting to switch between Amy's diaries, and then you're getting to switch between Nick's perspective as she's missing. So you're sort of like just reading her diary and taking it at face value. Where I imagine adapting it for the screen, it was probably hard to know how to do that and still trick the audience, and because you're telling a false narrative most of that time, and to try to figure out how to do that subtly so that it makes sense when you finally have the reveal. I'm sure that was a tricky thing for them to pull off.
I think I kind of clocked how they did that. I noticed she was a very kind of monotone kind of character every time she spoke. In her voice, she was very like upright and proper, and she kind of like had the background of having to fit into this amazing Amy kind of like picture that her parents wrote for her. So just writing her as a character to be very like upright and posturous kind of helps you understand later on in the movie when it's revealed that she's lying through her diary, but she's delivering it to you in dialogue that is at the same tone, same monotone, same kind of posturous voice.
Right.
And then later you kind of find out that everything about her is deceitful. So when you learn that, it's like, oh goodness, like everything about her is just fake, and even her tonation and speech.
Literally in my head, it just clicked, because she refers to herself in the diaries a lot as Amazing Abby, right?
Mm-hmm. Amy.
So that, Amy?
Amy?
Why did I keep flipping that? She writes in it as Amy. That didn't click, that she dissociates from the character a little bit. I don't know if that's just the one time or not.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. The Amazing Amy came from those kids' books that her parents wrote about the other Amy, but it is kind of interesting to think that maybe that was a way she could separate herself from the terrible things she was doing as a way of, I've never thought of that. That's interesting.
The detective that's going to find that and read that, if they've seen the books, they might associate with that great person. It's another level added to it, where if you think of her as this really awesome person that they portray in the books, that she says is always one step ahead of her.
Totally, yeah. Even when the detective first shows up at the house, which by the way, that's my favorite character, is the Kim Dickens.
Yeah.
She's so good in that role, and I love her. But when she first shows up, she's like, "Your wife is Amazing Amy?" Like, wow, I love these books. And so you're right, like it plants the seed right away of like nostalgia and somebody that couldn't possibly be anything but pure and amazing.
I wonder if that has anything to do with the fact that she's a manipulator. If she were real, growing up like that and having to like live up to that amazing Amy character when she isn't, leads her to feel like she needs to do everything to get to that point in her life.
Oh, I'm sure. The psychology of how she became who she is, I'm sure stems from that childhood and those parents who, the brief times we meet those parents too, it's very clear that they're not well people. Like they wouldn't have been great parents probably. So yeah, I'm sure that's a lot of where that narcissism comes from.
It's one of the things you're saying too is when you flip it and you find out that she was the one manipulating, it also adds to the fact when you realize that she's lying this whole time, then you don't, like for me at least, I didn't catch that she probably wasn't lying about, I don't remember Neil Patrick Harris's character's name, but it didn't click in my head that that was like the one person that like actually did these things to her. From what you can tell from the story at least, is like he was really stocky and he was creepy.
Right, yeah.
Because when you get to that scene in the movie, I just thought, oh yeah, she also conned this guy too. That's cool.
Yeah, it's funny too because she is kind of like one step ahead of so many of the other characters in the film. Like she's just constantly thinking that one little extra layer so that she can get ahead of whatever she needs to do to manipulate and use everybody. Like until she's used by the people at that motel thing she's staying at when they kind of swindle her and they sort of get at her, which is sort of like a little taste of her own medicine, which is kind of a fun moment.
I love that.
What kind of blew me away, and to kind of double down what you said about her always being a step ahead, is that calendar with like all the different scenarios she has and like every piece of the story that she needs to happen on certain dates that go like 4 or 5 months into the future. It's like, oh, she's like really thought this through. And then it reinforces that dialogue he has with the detective about, oh, she reads a lot in her spare time. She's been reading mystery novels and murder novels to learn the perfect, like, how to get away with murder kind of thing. And it's like, wow, all of it was planned 4 or 5 months in the future, you know, however long she's been planning it since their marriage started going up. Like, wow. When they open up the little wrapper in this movie, it's like truly marvelous, like spectacular writing, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's what I love about Gillian Flynn's writing, because her other books have that same element. I don't know if you've seen Sharp Objects, the miniseries they did for HBO. It's great, and she also wrote on that as well. But that's one of my favorite books, and that has that same sort of deliciousness she takes, and how she also, as the writer, is like one step ahead and thinking about these very flawed characters too, because the hero of Sharp Objects is also someone that at face value you would think shouldn't be a hero. And in Dark Places it's even more that way. And then there's Amy Dunn from Gone Girl, who is sort of like the ultimate villain. Yet there is, I mean, for me anyway, I still really respect her. Like I'm sort of like, yeah, you are in the head, but you did something that is like really out there as a way of getting revenge for your husband cheating, which is, you know, so it's a lot of, I know a lot of people argue that it's like such an anti-feminist book and movie that it's sort of like makes the woman out to be lying about being victimized, and that, you know, it does a disservice to women. But I think that she's such a badass in a lot of ways, and I'm sort of team Amy in a way. And maybe that's why, maybe it speaks to some part of me that I don't get to exercise in life because I don't want to be a bad person, but I like watching someone else get to do that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Asha, what do you think of the character?
Amy?
Yeah.
She was okay. I really loved the sister. She was my favorite character, without a doubt. Loved her. Like, she wasn't fully team Nick. Like, she called him out on his BS and was like, no, you're an idiot. What are you doing? Like, kicked him out. But, like, was also...
There's a part of her that kind of believed that he murdered her.
Yeah. Well, I thought that he murdered her at the beginning. I was like, oh, it was this dude. As soon as he was like, oh, I went to the beach to, like, clear my mind. I was like, he did it. He did it. And then the first turn, I was like, ooh, I literally paused the movie and had to, like, take a step back when it cut to her in the car. I was like, no way she's alive. There's zero chance. Like, this woman is a genius. She's definitely super smart. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I respect her as a character because, like, that's actually very impressive. They had a happy ending. They literally just lived happily ever after. After she slit Barney's throat. Oh my god, that caught me off guard.
I loved that Nick started pointing out all the, like, oh, that's really convenient that she had a box cutter right there to the cops and everything.
Oh yeah, he knows, right?
And
We'll be right back.
Gotta go do some yoga. Be back in a second.
Hello, we're back. As amazing as it is in terms of like a viewership movie, like it's all neat, it's wrapped up, there's like no loose ends. It kind of shocked me how accurate it was to like real manipulator relationships. Having been in like a couple myself, it's kind of very scary how accurate the ending is. You know, it's like this man was almost put to his death penalty, you know, like he was this close from the lethal injection. But in typical like manipulator fashion, he kind of forgives the manipulator and he kind of moves on to agree it's better to be together for the long run, which, you know, I would argue is not true at all. So the scary accuracy of manipulation and whatnot is a reality in this movie, but it also kind of expands it to the enabler side of manipulative relationships too. Mm-hmm. Like Margot, as amazing as she is as a sister, is partly enabling him by constantly saying, I support you 100% no matter what, which enables him to continue with this like toxic manipulative relationship. And he says right before he makes the decision, I need you to be my voice of reason. I need you to side with me on this. Those are not the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And she's in tears, like she almost hates him for the fact that he's doing it, but she still kind of says, yes, okay, fine, you have my support to do this, which is another scary reality in these kind of relationships that I think this movie did justice of by not shoving it in your face, but also being like, damn, like think about it. It's kind of not good at all what's happening, and it's not a happy ending. They're back together. Yeah. You know how
satire ending.
Yeah, you know how deep this manipulation and life-threatening existence goes with this relationship, but it's there. It exists now, and now they have a kid.
Yeah,
that might not be his.
That poor kid,
because you don't know if it's gonna be his or not.
Yeah, I mean, and it's great to that point. There's that scene in her diary where she's talking about going to bed at night and looking at the door, and she kind of pulls the covers up over her and she's scared that he's going to come in. And then we see that at the end that he's actually the one that gets in bed and kind of cowers, like afraid of her in the house. And to live in fear like that, like that's no way to... I would love them to do some kind of, I don't know, short sequel so we can see where Nick and Amy are now and like how that worked out for them, because it can't be good. I don't think there's sustainability in that at all.
I agree.
What Asha, you were saying about the sister, she's also such an amazing character. And I love that Carrie Coon, who plays that part, she had just been like a Steppenwolf actor in Chicago who hadn't really done, she was like in her 30s, which is kind of late to be breaking into the industry, but she got the audition tape to like play the twin of Ben Affleck, and she's much younger than him, and she was like, why am I like, this is ridiculous, like why would I be auditioning for this is so not right for me. And then she did the tape, and David Fincher, something about it, he was like, that's her, because she so is that person, like you just fall in love with that character. And she has the most integrity probably of anybody in the movie. And even though she's much younger than Ben Affleck, they make it work. Like you do believe that they could be twins and could be the same.
Yeah, it wasn't even a question in my mind.
No, but she's probably my second favorite character. And I also know that when they were filming the movie, they realized that those two characters, the detective and Margot, never had a proper meeting moment where they actually meet and say hello. And so they wrote that little scene on the day quickly of them like introducing themselves to each other because they were like, oh, it's important that we show this like connection happen between these two that kind of are the voice of reason in a lot of ways in the story.
Yeah, they're almost like the neutral line. Either of them are on one side of that gray line. You know, Margot's slightly on the other side towards her brother in terms of like the morality, and then the detective is slightly on Amy's side, and then they kind of divert further and further, and then it all comes together in the middle.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool that we have those two characters walking both sides of that line the whole movie, because then it keeps us centered on the reality of everything. Like we aren't able to commit fully to a bias because we get both perspectives so close to the neutral.
And as well, there's the other cop that is so the whole time, just arrest this guy. What are you doing? You got it. He's clearly did it.
He's so funny. They have some of the best comedy in the film are those two, the detective and then that cop. Just I love the scene too where they're talking about the blood type, and he's like, should I know my wife's blood type? Like after she's like no.
And she just goes no.
So good.
But it's funny too because it shows like how the detective hazed him a bit, you know, like really kind of grilled him at the beginning, like when she's technically on his side.
I love that. Yeah, it's such a well-written character. It's and she's so good in that. Like she's She kills it in that part.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
In the same scene too, when she gives him crap for not calling his mother-in-law.
Totally.
Go, dude. Go call them right now.
God, you didn't call them yet? Your wife's missing. Their daughter's missing. There's so much to talk about with this movie that like I always try to make notes, but this one was just, I was so invested. I was so involved in the story. I think one of my favorite things with the movie is, it's like 2.5 hours long. It's a long movie, but they don't waste a second. They get into each scene like late. They get out of it early. It's so tightly written that it's just, there was so much there that they had to tell it in 2.5 hours. The pacing of it is so tight, and it just goes scene. I was in awe the whole time that I don't even know what to say about it, because it was speechless.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I actually was rewatching some of it last night, and I pressed pause right at the moment where she's missing. And it was only 8 minutes into the movie. And I'm like, oh my God, we've already met Margot. We've already had a flashback to their meeting that night when they do the sugar storm and they kiss out. Like, we've already had a ton of time with these characters, and it's 8 minutes. And we now feel something for the fact that she's missing. And that like, it's very like crazy well done, because that's very hard writing to pull off.
And it's the same too as when she's writing the diary, preparing for it. You have to start off. She literally tells you that like how it's going in the movie is that, you have to start off, make them like this. You got to tell these true stories and really get them on your side.
Totally.
And then that's when you start lying. It comes to also because we just did Back to the Future. That's a movie where they really take their time to build the world and see all these different setups of the movie, where this one, it really is just 8 minutes right before the big thing happens.
Yeah.
I didn't even catch that.
That's what I love about the thriller genre. It's because you don't need to build a world, because it's in our world. I notice a lot about really good thrillers and sometimes horror movies that aren't like way out there, is they really do like to just get into the story, because it's based in a world that everyone else is already familiar with.
Right.
Especially with this kind of tone too. Like, it's a bit darker, a bit more grittier, and a bit more depressing, which is something a lot of people really relate with. One of the first shots, not so much when she's laying in bed, but when he's standing out on the curb at the beginning, and it's like, it's very blue. It's like early morning. This guy like looks beat up and tired. So it's like, oh, I relate to that guy, you know?
Yeah. I loved in the script for that moment, because I've read the script so many times too, because I like to kind of study that script. It's all it says is Nick stands there, he looks ill.
Yeah.
And I just love just the word ill. And I've now used that a lot when I write, because it sums up something right away. You're like, they look ill. And you're like, oh yeah, I know that. And that can mean so many different things, but you can just right away know what that feels like and looks like.
When you get a script as an actor, like that's where you get kind of your idea of how the scene's going to go, right?
Yeah.
And I like that she takes that kind of from like actual like novel writing, where it's, you have to tell what they're feeling written instead of showing it face to face. So it's such a smart, like, one of them was when Neil Patrick Harris and Nick Ben Affleck, when they're talking, right as he shuts the gate in his face, it says like ugly paws.
Yeah, I know that part.
That's so great, because one, it gives you, for the editing, it shows you, okay, there's going to be that ugly pause of awkward time before we cut. I love how that kind of writing can do so much for a script. That's how you sell the movies, reading the script. You have to understand that before you go filming it. Like, that's such a great way to help visualize in script writing. That's so genius.
I find when I like to write, I love to use descriptive words like that. I've been told a few times in my life, don't, because I'll write would be a pretty basic short sentence, but I like describe the shit out of it. So it's like, I got a lot of this because I grew up doing little short horror stories in like my 5th grade daily journal. My 5th grade writing teacher wanted us to journal our days every single day. I was in 5th grade. I was boring. All I did, I would go to school, French class, English class, went home, played Halo or something. So that my teacher would say, Thomas, like, you gotta write more. I'm like, I don't do much.
What does she expect?
Yeah. So she's like, okay, we'll try something else. Like, try being creative and writing something. So I wrote over the course of the school year in like journal entries, this like horror story about this kid who goes under this like derelict mansion is what the story was called, and gets lost in the catacombs under the mansion. And every week I would like resubmit it, and my teacher would then be like, "This is amazing. I can't wait for next week." Like the first like lines or whatever was like describing this mansion as like dark, twisted, and slimy and gross and like moss covered, but the moss is dead and now like
you really
decomposed.
You really took descriptive to heart.
Oh, exactly. So sorry you unlocked this weird story about my fifth grade brain.
I want to read this story now. Do you still have?
Yeah.
Do you have the entries?
That journal is in someone's possession in my family. It's tucked away in like a bin in my mom's basement or something. But I know I kept it because I was so proud of it as a kid, and that really got me into writing and using very descriptive terminology that I don't use as much now, but it's still there when I do write.
That's funny. In 5th grade, I was drawing comics of a secret agent, and it was all spelt wrong. So that's funny juxtaposition.
Very different brains.
You guys were still creating, telling story. Like, that's pretty cool. I feel like a lot of kids that age are not doing that.
We're gonna take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Hello, listeners. It's Jackson's mom. I'm here to tell you about our Patreon. If you subscribe to our Patreon starting at $3 a month, you can unlock early access to videos and podcast episodes, be a part of live episodes, receive free monthly gifts, and hear full versions of our podcast with bits like this.
I just have to say, I'm a big fan of Jordan Peele. When I heard Jackson say you were in Nope, I got super excited. Yeah. I had to contain it.
Well, he is the real deal too. Like I did not know what to expect going into that, because having been in the industry for almost a decade now, you meet famous people. Like, he's very famous and he's a very famous director. And a lot of the time, like, they're not like the kind of people you want to hang out with, because they're so famous. They're not even like people anymore. Like, they're kind of, they're not treated like people. So then they don't really act like approachable. And so I got cast, and I met with him on Zoom, and he was lovely. But I remember going to set being like, I don't know what this is going to be like. I've never worked with someone that's a director that's so famous. And he could not have been more grounded and normal and lovely and so easy to talk to. So like, and something with a lot of famous people is like, when you talk to them, like, most of the time it feels like their eyes are kind of glazed. Like, they're like, I have to talk to you right now, but I'm not really taking in anything you're saying. Like, that's sort of what it often feels like. And he's so open and genuine, and he's connected, like, he's with you. And I watch him like that with everybody. And he's really like, it was a very special experience, because he's the real deal. And I think there's a reason why his movies are so great, because he's just like a real person, which is lovely.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's great.
So, subscribe to our Patreon today. The link is in the show notes. And now, back to the show.
So, I kind of want to get to know a bit more about you. You're an actor and writer. You have quite an impressive resume. Nope, which is one of my favorite movies. Like, how did you find yourself in front of the camera, and how do you find yourself now writing? Like, what is your journey to this point in your life? I kind of want to know.
Yeah. I mean, acting was something that I kind of started right out of high school. I moved from England to America, and I didn't know anybody. I sort of was like, I guess I'm a very like driven I'm similar to you guys in that, like, when I was 10, 11, I was writing crazy. I would like finish school, and then I'd be like, Mom, can I go write for the rest of the day? And she'd be like, sure. And then I just go and write, and I'd make up crazy stories, and I try to do plays with my friends. And like, I was very like, I was driven by that kind of thing. And so then when we moved to America, I was like, well, I don't know anybody. I think I'll just pursue being an actor. Like, how hard can it be? Like, I'll see what that's like. I might as well just pour all my time into that. I didn't go to college. I just like got an agent and moved to LA. And then really kind of the first 6 months was a struggle to get auditions, because no one knew me. I wasn't, I think the only thing I had going for me was that I was 18, but I looked like I was 12. And that's where Dexter came. I auditioned for Dexter about 6 months into living in LA, and it was to play the younger version of the main character. And I looked like him. I think I had a darkness in me that they recognized and were like, yeah, that's what this guy needs. But I had no idea what I was doing. I just sort of showed up on that set the first day, like, oh my God, like I got this part now. I hope I hope I know how to do this. And then that sort of just led to other jobs after that. And my acting career has been very up and down. Like I've had years where I work a ton, and blocks of time where I was like every month I was working on something different, flying around to New Zealand and New Orleans and doing different TV series or movies. And then I would have years where I had no jobs and I just was sort of sitting waiting for the phone to ring. And that's where the writing came from, was that in the downtime, I realized that I needed to stay creatively fulfilled, and I want to maybe do something that's for me and that gets me back to what I loved about when I was a kid, being creative and doing stuff that I could do on my own time. And then probably about 10 years ago, I got my first writing manager. For a long time, I would write things that were very actor friendly, like very slice of life dramas about like high school shooters and like that kind of stuff that was very like, you know, morose and no one wanted to make, because no one wants to fund those kinds of movies. They're very hard to get made. So my manager was like, look, take the writing, take the characters that you like to write, and write a horror film. Like that's what will get sold. Like, but I'd never really watched any horror movies. So I sort of just like dove into watching like every horror movie I could find, sort of learned the genre, and even like the thrillers, like movies like Gone Girl. I had never really watched a lot of that either. So I quickly fell in love with the genre and was like, oh, this is what I want to write forever, are these kinds of movies. So that's where that came from. And I wrote a film a little over 10 years ago now, maybe not. And then they finally made it in 2018.
This is ICU?
Yeah, it's called ICU. Yeah. And it wasn't the name that I didn't call it that. I called it something else, but it was funny. After I sold the script, the company that came on, they renamed it. They kind of just took off with it. They got the director, they got all the cast. And I was very much, I think the way that I found out that it was being made was that I had a friend auditioning for it. And she was like, hey, I think I'm auditioning for a movie you wrote. I just got a script that has your name on it. And I was like, what? Like, what is it called? Like, what movie? And so that's the funny thing that I've learned a lot as a screenwriter now, which is mostly what I do for a living now, is writing. I write horror movies for studios. Most of them never get made, but it's a fun journey kind of doing that and learning a lot as I do it. It's a funny thing in my life that I still act sometimes, where you show up on set, you're treated like gold. And then as the writer, you show up and people are like, who are you? Why are you here? What are you, like it's a funny thing.
Well, that's amazing. Jackson was trying to coerce me to watch ICU a few days ago.
It was for this.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
sneaky.
I was like,
very sneaky.
Yeah.
he didn't, because it's a surprise about who comes on, right? So he's like, do you want to watch this movie? And I can't remember what my excuse was, but I'm like, maybe tomorrow. And then tomorrow never came around. Yeah. And then now I understand.
Yeah. It was just,
so
I saw it and I was like, oh, I really want to watch that now after reading about it.
Well, it's funny we're talking about Gone Girl, because you'll see if you watch ICU at some point, they're very structurally quite similar. And I wrote ICU before Gone Girl came out, but then I went and saw Gone Girl and I was like, what? This is like the kind of stuff I love. Like this is what and that's why I think I fell in love. And Gone Girl is a much better movie, not at the fault of the director of ICU or any of the actors. It's just that my writing, I wrote it when I was 24 or whatever. I still had so much to learn about life and people, and Gone Girl there's a lot more depth, I think, to Gone Girl than ICU, but you'll see it's still structured in a very similar way, where you're constantly having to guess and wonder who to trust.
I'm excited. I'm going to have to give it a watch now for sure.
Is there anything you found from Gone Girl that you've been taking into your writing now that you've seen it and clearly love it so much?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's the kind of movie I put on anytime I'm sort of stuck in my writing, and even if it doesn't give me something like immediately that I can tangibly take from it, it gives me a sense of comfort where I then think, oh, I can solve this problem. I'm going to solve this problem. It's going to be fine. Like the writing of the characters, the tone, the world, it's often very similar to the stuff that I write. And so, yeah, I find that I borrow little things, or anytime I've written something that has the mystery element running through it, I'll watch like the scene with like Scoot McNairy in the movie, which he's the guy that Nick meets with, who was one of Amy's exes, who sort of tells.
Yeah.
And that scene is structured really well because there's a lot of exposition in the scene, but they do it in a way that's really fun, and there's a lot of humor in it. And so I've watched that scene before to be like, how is this structured? Because I have to write this scene now that has a lot of exposition where you're having to learn clues to this mystery, but I don't want to do it in a way that's boring or that takes a million years. And so there's little things that I find I take from that, especially because I just love Gillian Flynn. I think she's a genius writer. Yeah, so that's definitely a big a big one.
Something I loved with that scene is that's the only scene with them. It's the only time they really talk. I loved being able to use just a side character to give information, but they did it, you're right, they did it in such a fun way where it was just, you know so much about this character. You obviously know that she's manipulated. So it's just a way for you to like click, like, oh yeah, like she's really good at this. Like it's exposition, but it's adding to the pieces in your mind as you're putting this whole thing together.
Yeah, exactly. It's less kind of blind exposition out of nowhere, and then more of a confirmation of what we are now assuming of this character from what we've learned already. So it's like, oh yeah, she's manipulative because she's done this, and it's like, oh wait, okay, yeah, definitely, I see that. And then, oh yeah, she did this, this, and this. And it's like, oh, okay, cool. That relates to this scene in the movie where we didn't really know why that, the red panties were there, for example. And it's like, oh, we know this part.
Exactly.
Which is how I think exposition should be done.
100% agree.
Because we talk a lot about it. When it isn't done poorly, you barely know it's exposition, right?
Exactly. And as an actor too, it's funny because sometimes you book a job where I'm like, oh my God, I have to say all this exposition. Like how do I do this without it seeming like what's the way? And you wish that the writer would maybe have spent more time massaging it and getting it to a place that, because that's some of the worst thing to have to deliver. So I think when I'm writing sometimes, and my husband is an actor too, and he'll read something of mine sometimes and he'll be like, you have to change this section, like this is too dense, it's too dense, it's not fun. And he'll encourage me to, and I'll be like, oh my God, you're right, like I'm being lazy, I need to like really figure this out better.
Was when the scene where she comes in right after that first the vigil, when the cop and Nick are talking, where she comes in saying she was pregnant. That's where she really starts leaning into accusing him more, and it's like then she jumps and the things fall over. She starts laying in, like the whole scene really sticks in your face of this. The odds are not good.
Yeah,
and that scene just did such a great job of laying it all out and showing you, and then right at the end, just again the last line that. She was pregnant. Yeah,
it's true. And that's really where it does change for the Rhonda character, the cop character is like, that's the piece. And Amy knew, like, it's like she orchestrated it all. Yeah. She anticipated what the cop was going to sort of think in advance of like all the clues that end up adding up to like, there's no way this guy didn't kill his wife. Like he must have done it.
Yeah.
Again, I think she's a genius.
Yeah. I'm curious because as we typically do on the podcast, there's like a good and a bad. I want to know if you have any criticisms as a writer, as a performer for Gone Girl in your mind, or anything that sticks out to you that maybe you might have done differently, or it just you don't love the part of the movie. Like, is there anything like that in this movie that stick out for you?
It's hard because I do just love this movie so much. And I think there's, there was something that always, and again, I don't think this is a flaw necessarily, but the idea that Amy was planning to kill herself at some point, and she's like marked it on the calendar, like this is the day I'll kill myself. This is the, and sort of understanding the concept of someone that has like narcissistic personality disorder is that likely she's never going to kill herself. Like that's something that, like just the idea that she was ever even planning to do that sometimes has made me think like, is that real? Like, would she have really done? And of course she doesn't. So I think it answers the question for you where you realize like, she never was going to probably kill herself because that seems so extreme. Like then she can't relish watching this guy go to prison. But I don't know. That's sort of the only thing I can think that if I were to, but it's not even a flaw. It's just something that I don't know. I question that character trait a little bit.
Yeah.
And two, I like the moment where they kind of set in her brain where she decides not to do is when she starts enjoying watching the news.
Yes.
Like, because she wasn't necessarily doing it until her neighbor came over and said, have you been watching this? And then that's when, especially too, when she's with Neil Patrick Harris and he's so obviously hating the fact that she's so enthralled by this. But it's so great seeing her be like so involved in watching it unfold, and she kind of gets carried away watching her plan turn out flawlessly, where it seems that's kind of where she decided, I kind of want to stick around in.
Yeah, the Neil Patrick Harris side of it, that's one more area that I've always questioned where it's like, he had security cameras in the house, and there was that moment where she goes and pretends to be, but I always wonder, like, what? So she's just selected that, what, did she delete the footage of everything else that happened in that house? Like, what happened with that security footage? Like, wasn't that kind of suspicious that There's no footage of her being carried into the house, being kidnapped, and all of those things that you would maybe expect to see. So I mean, maybe I've missed something with that, but
Right.
Well, I kind of agree. Like, additionally, I said this to you when we were watching it. If they did go back and find the tapes, they would see that he would leave. Like, for the first 2 nights, I think it was, he would leave because he wasn't technically moved in.
yeah, true.
But if they did go back and find the footage, they'd find holes in her story because she said that, like, every night, all night kind of thing, like, he was tormenting her. But if they'd have looked, they would have seen him leaving every evening. Possible she just may have not thought that all through.
True.
Because she was kind of weak in those moments of, like, her lies kind of falling apart around her a little bit. So it's hard to tell whether that was, like, an oversight, deleted scenes maybe just to cut runtime, for example. Like, it's hard to tell.
Yeah, totally. And it's funny too, because like as a writer, I know too that even in ICU, I'll read online, people would be like, "There's a hole with this moment, like that's just a plot hole," and I'll be thinking like, "No, it's actually not." Like I know it is. There is a moment in there that explains this thing, and that I'm pretty confident there's no holes in this movie, and that's probably the same with like Fincher and Gillian Flynn. They're probably like, "No, there's a reason. This is what," and maybe. Either, like you say, it's in the deleted scene, or so you never know if like there is something they've thought through everything and we've just missed it. Yeah.
That's my favorite thing to do with movies is like I love to rewatch things after I've seen it because I like to, once I know the story, I can go back and say, okay, well, where does this add up and where is this moment? And oh, well, that I didn't realize at that time. Like that's one of my favorite parts of watching stuff. Is just
one of your favorite parts of watching stuff is rewatching stuff.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I want to have a movie that I want to immediately watch it again, and like that's why I love like the Knives Out movies. It's like I literally will watch those like 5 times because I'm like every little thing has been thought of and it's all so perfectly planned out.
Quite ironically, I think that's one of my favorite things with Jordan Peele movies as well. Is there's just so many layers to it.
True, yeah.
The first one I saw was Us, and there's so much in Us.
I've only seen Us once. I need to watch it again because I've seen Get Out like 5 times, but I need to rewatch Us.
Yeah.
How many times do you think you've watched Nope?
I think I've only.
Have you watched Nope?
I have seen Nope. I think I've only seen it 2 times. I think I saw it at the premiere, and then I saw it with a group of friends after it came out, and then I obviously saw my stuff a bunch of times because I had to do ADR recording for the all my lines were done in ADR. So I was there on set on the day in the suit, but then I went in I think 3 times to do ADR lines for it. So I saw that sequence like 1,000 million times.
Right.
You played the TMZ guy, correct?
I do, yeah, the guy, exact. So you never see me, but it's just my voice and body. But yeah.
Yeah. I thought I recognized you.
Yeah, right. Well, this is a podcast, so it is my voice. But
well, I'm gonna be honest. We've taken up our hour with you, and I don't want to keep you even as much as I'd love to keep chatting with you for forever.
Oh, it was likewise. This was so much fun, guys. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. I'll have to get your contact so I can send you a script sometime.
Please, I would love to. I'm thrilled. You had me at your 5th grade horror mansion story. So
thank you. I do try.
And thank you, Asha, for running the tech for us.
Yeah, sorry I didn't participate too much. I just did a grueling shift at No Frills.
Oh no.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad we could have you, and thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. This was a lovely highlight of my weekend. So I anytime I would love to talk more movies with you guys.
We'd love to have you on again.
Thank you so much.
It was truly a pleasure. Also, Gone Girl, what a great movie. Thank you for introducing that to all of us.
Thank you so much.
It was really good.
I'm so happy none of you had seen it. That makes my day that you guys hadn't seen. Because I always wish I could erase my memory and watch a movie like that again, like not knowing anything. So it's exciting to talk to people that see it for the first time.
Yeah, I just have a really terrible memory, so every time I watch a movie, it's
yeah, Jackson's seen it 5 times already. Actually.
Oh, really?
Right.
Gosh,
I keep trying to tell him like, no, you've seen this before.
These are fools.
And then I feed him his oatmeal.
Brought me back to the nursing. All right. Well, thank you so much.
There's a movie in that. Yeah. Thank you guys. Yeah.
There's a 5th grade short story there.
Yeah.
That we can.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Good night, guys.
Good night.
Thank you.
Have a great night. Thank you.
You too. Bye.
And cut.
Hey there, I'm Jackson's mom, and this has been Mixed Reviews with Tom McMahon, Jackson Brotherton, and our in-host genius, Asha Joseph. Be sure to follow our podcast on your favorite podcast app and join our Patreon for extended, ad-free, and bonus episodes. The link is in the show notes. This has been a Vanish Entertainment production. Thank you for listening.
Cut. Room tone.